the Islamic Nazis in Tehran have, saying they swear off nuclear weapons. We just need energy here. That's all. We gave them money too, just like we gave the Iranians. We signed documents with them too, so forth and so. What the hell is it going to take to realize what we're up against here? This country should be united in its own defense. Nobody's dragging us into anything. It's not the Jews. It's not Israel again. No. Long-range, intercontinental, ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads are for you and me and your children and your grandchildren. That's what it is. And if they get them, they will use them in due course, if not sooner. They will change the entire Middle East. And you'll say, who cares? Yeah, who cares? Who cares about that? Who cares about Europe? Who cares about anything, right? Wrong. One day we'll turn around and we don't have any allies. And the enemy will be lined up. You know, they're in our hemisphere. They're in Central and South America. Oh, yes, they are. They're in the Arctic Circle, which is why the president talks about Greenland. They have a West Africa base to the Communist Chinese now. They have a base in the Solomon Islands now. What do you think they're doing? You think they're going fishing? Time. And there's no question there will be a cabal out there for which what I say will be viewed as terrible. And I will come under withering attack. There's nothing new about that. But I've always felt that whether it's here or on radio or elsewhere, that my relationship is with you. Not the think tanks, not the Washington insiders, not the reprobates and others who have access to a keyboard and a computer. This is very important, what's taking place now. This is a headline in the New York Times. Iran has ramped up uranium enrichment while continuing nuclear talks. Tehran now has the capacity to produce bomb-grade fuel for roughly 10 weapons, according to a confidential UN report. So for all intents and purposes, Iran now has a nuclear weapon. We've been negotiating for, 5 weeks? We had the Obama deal. We had the Biden deal. We gave them $100 billion under the last administration, which, of course, they used to build up their nuclear program. We've been warned about this. We've been warned about it from the Prime Minister of Israel. We've been warned about it from me over and over again. And now we're here. We're at the precipice. And the article goes on. Iran has roughly doubled its stockpile of nuclear bomb-grade uranium over the past 3 months, even while negotiating with the Trump administration over a deal to limit its nuclear program. According to a confidential report about the United Nations Nuclear Inspection Agency, has begun circulating to capitals around the world. Now, the UN isn't exactly pro-American or pro-Israel, but they are very, very concerned about what they're seeing, and they should be. The increase gives Tehran the capacity to produce bomb-grade fuel for roughly 10 weapons, up from around 5 or 6 when President Trump was inaugurated in January. But the surge also puts new pressure on Washington in its negotiations, in which it is demanding that Iran cease all production of nuclear material. Now, the Director General of the IAEA, that is the unit within the UN, is responsible for this. His name is Rafael Grossi. Now, Grossi wrote that the significantly increased production and accumulation of highly enriched uranium by Iran, the only non-nuclear weapon state to produce such nuclear material, is of serious concern. You don't need this material for domestic energy consumption. Then we have this from Fox News. Explosive new intelligence report reveals Iran's nuclear weapons program is still active. A new intelligence report claims Iran is continuing with its active nuclear weapons program, which it says can be used to launch missiles over long distance. The startling intelligence gathering of Austrian officials contradicts the assessment of the U.S. Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard told a Senate Intelligence Committee in March that the American intelligence community, quote, continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. Well, apparently she's dead wrong. Austria's version of the FBI, the Director at State Protection and Intelligence Service, wrote Monday in an intelligence report, quote, in order to assert and enforce its regional political power ambitions, the Islamic Republic of Iran is striving for comprehensive rearmament with nuclear weapons to make the regime immune to attack and to expand and consolidate its dominance in the Middle East and beyond. The Austrian Domestic Intelligence Agency reported the Iranian nuclear weapons development program is well advanced, and Iran possesses a growing arsenal of ballistic missiles capable of delivering nuclear warheads over long distances, like to the United States. According to an intelligence document obtained and reviewed by Fox News Digital, Iran has developed sophisticated sanctions evasion networks, which has benefited Russia. The Times of Israel, Vienna, Iran carried out secret nuclear activities with material not declared to the UN nuclear watchdog at 3 locations that have long been under investigation, the watchdog said in a wide-ranging confidential report to member states seen by Reuters. The findings in the Comprehensive International Atomic Energy Agency report requested by the agency's 35-nation Board of Governors in November paved the way for a push by the United States, Britain, France, and Germany for the board to declare Iran in violation of non-proliferation obligations. I don't really think Iran cares if we make declarations, do you? Tehran, which openly seeks Israel's destruction, claims it wants to master nuclear technology for peaceful purposes and has long denied accusations by Western powers that it is seeking to develop nuclear weapons. But it has been enriching increasing quantities of uranium to levels that can only be used for nuclear weaponry. Oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to see. I don't want to see. This seems to be the attitude of many. And we have a movement in this country akin to the America First movement in the late 1930s, 1940, that was led by Charles Lindbergh. Japan and Tojo were on the move, as Mussolini in Italy was on the move, as the Third Reich was rising up. They kept telling the Americans, look, there's nothing we can do about this. It's far away. It's really none of our business. To the extent we can be involved in diplomacy, that's okay. But we don't want all these bombs falling, and we certainly don't want to get involved. And this is the aftermath of World War II, where most of the nations said, we don't want to get involved in any more of these wars. In fact, in 1928, last time I checked before the 1930s and 40s, many in the world got together and they passed what's called the Kellogg-Briand Pact of 1928. Boy, what a great treaty this was. And of course, we were involved in this too, whereas a treaty providing for the renunciation of war as an instrument of national policy was concluded and signed at Paris on the 27th day of August, 1928. And what did this treaty say? It said, deeply sensible of their solemn duty to promote the welfare of mankind, persuaded that the time has come when a frank renunciation of war as an instrument of national policy should be made to the end, that the peaceful and friendly relations now existing between their peoples may be perpetuated, convinced that all changes in the relations with one another should be sought only by pacifistic means, and be the result of a peaceful and orderly process, and that any signatory power which shall hereafter seek to promote to its national interest by resort to war, it should be denied the benefits furnished by this treaty. Hopeful that, encouraged by this example, all other nations of the world will join in this humane endeavor, and by adhering to the present treaty as soon as it comes into force, bring their policies within the scope, blah, 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 blah. 1928. Then Congress passed and the President signed in 1935, 1936, 1937, 1939 neutrality acts. We're neutral. We're not going to be dragged into foreign wars. Dragged into foreign wars by these Europeans or anybody else. We already had World War I. That's enough. We're not going to be dragged into these foreign wars. And so we have this organization, the America First Committee, that came to be. And the America First Committee was organized in September 1940, as USHistory.com points out, to oppose America's potential intervention in World War II. Hitler's invasion of Poland had precipitated war in September 1939. A year later, the only major military force resisting the Nazis was Britain. The smaller nations had been quickly overrun. France had capitulated. Soviet Union was using its non-aggression pact with Germany to pursue its own interests in Finland and elsewhere. And at the time, a majority of Americans felt that while the world would be a better place if Britain prevailed over Germany, they were not inclined to declare war and repeat the earlier experience of American soldiers fighting on European soil. The reluctance had inspired Congress to pass neutrality acts in the late 1930s, which restricted the American government's ability to support either party in the conflict, which in practice meant the Allies, since the Axis powers were widely regarded with distaste. Roosevelt, who'd been corresponding with Churchill for years before Churchill was even part of the Tory government, clearly identified American interests with the hope for British victory. Using tactics like the basis for a destroyers deal, he attempted to maximize his support for the British while skirting, if not actually violating, the principle of neutrality. The America First Committee group opposed him at every step. Its membership, which grew to around 800,000 by 1941, was national in character, while especially strong in the Midwest. Its best-known leader was Charles Lindbergh, who was accompanied by an amazing array that included critics of Roosevelt from the right, Colonel McCormick of the Chicago Tribune, and the left, the socialist Norman Thomas. Sounds similar today. You have the Bernie Sanders, the AOCs, those kinds of nut jobs, George Soros. And then on the other side, you have the Charles Kochs, all coming together really in this bizarre kind of mentality that they claim is America first, which winds up being America last. Along with Stalin isolationists, Senators Burton Wheeler of Kansas and William Borah of Idaho, and the anti-Semitic Father Edward Coughlin. Well, that sounds familiar. Israel and the Jews, you see, are going to drag us into war with Iran. Israel and the Jews are going to drag us into war with Japan and Germany and Italy. Same thing. When Lend-Lease was proposed by Roosevelt in the winter of 1941, the America First Committee was strongly opposed. Lindbergh gave speeches across the country emphasizing that support for Britain was sentimental and misguided. His main points were the geography. It was impossible to imagine Britain defeating Germany from its island air bases, or for an invasion of the European continent with the 1 million men that would be required for victory. He argued that while fighting a war in Europe would be a disaster for the United States, geographically greatly favored a defensive position that would allow it to hold the entire Western Hemisphere against any aggressor. Hear echoes today? Of course you do. Of course you do. The America First Committee and its supporters lost the debate on Lend-Lease, which Congress passed, giving Roosevelt broad powers to provide material support to the Allies. Now, when the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941, communist support for the America First group evaporated. By the fall, with war coming ever closer, the group's influence was dwindling. The end came quickly. 4 days after the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the group dissolved itself. In its final statement, the committee declared that while its policies might have prevented war, that war was now a reality, and it had become the duty of America to work for the united goal of victory. And so what happened? The world lost tens of millions of people. We lost an enormous number of people. We had the draft that sent men all over the world to fight the Axis powers in probably the most horrific war since the Civil War, or since World War II. And so here we have the AFC stance demonstrated the limits and perils of so-called realism. You hear that word used today. We're realists. It's a realism, man. We got to get rid of the old system. We have a brand new system. The founders were wrong. Everybody before today was wrong. NATO's wrong. Everything's wrong. But we're right. Realism. Foreign policy. Lindbergh's analysis of the military situation in 1940 was largely correct, but had his ideas prevailed, Britain might not have survived long enough to benefit from Hitler's rash, ultimately disastrous decision to invade Russia. Now this group, this America's First group of the 1940s, late 30s, the America First organization, as AP U.S. history points out, was founded in 1940, became one of the largest anti-interventionist movements in the U.S. during the lead-up to World War II. Critics of America First accused it of harboring anti-Semitic and pro-fascist sentiments, especially due to some members' controversial statements and affiliations. Gee, doesn't that sound familiar today? In fact, doesn't this whole damn thing sound familiar? Now, as of right now, while you're watching this, Sunday evening, Sunday night in some parts of the country, the Iranians now have not the capacity for the nuclear weapon, but in effect, a nuclear weapon. Now, what are we going to do about it? And so there's been a movement in the isolationist movement. There's been a movement in the America Last movement, which is, it's manageable. We can manage this. It's not manageable. My first guest is going to be Zuhdi Jasser. In the West, we don't seem to understand the mindset of the Islamist terrorist Nazis. I don't know why. It's available. They publish it. They say it day in and day out. They've written books about it. I don't know why the media in America doesn't dig into those books and explain what we're up against, but I have, and I've explained it. It's a totally different ideology. Now, I said here about a month ago, even with communists and fascists, mutual assured destruction means something. But with Islamist Nazi terrorists, it means nothing. Nothing. They're willing to kill themselves for a greater cause. And in fact, as long as the West exists, whether it's the Jews in Israel or the Christians in the Middle East, or the entire West, Christian majority, America or Europe, as long as we exist, and that includes Muslims who don't buy in to the terrorist ideology, as long as they exist, well, then they can never go to heaven. They can never achieve what God wants them to achieve. And so they're not going to stop. They're not going to allow a piece of paper to stop them. And they are suicidal. It is a death cult. Mutual assured destruction doesn't work. This would be the first regime, a terrorist, Islamist, fundamentalist regime with a nuclear weapon. Now, is this what we want to see on our watch? Meaning our generation? Do we really care what the reprobates and the little cabal say from the Quincy Institute, founded by Soros and Koch and other extremists? Do we really care what they have to say? Or are we going to use our own brains? Look at history. History, we don't even have to go past 9/11 and see what took place. Listen to what they say. Read what they say. We want to avoid war. We want to avoid casualties. We want to avoid dropping bombs, but they don't. They don't. Neither do their communist Chinese supporters who are building up a military to destroy us. Neither does the inbred in North Korea, whose father signed agreement after agreement after agreement, just like the Islamic Nazis in Tehran have, saying they swear off nuclear weapons. We just need energy here. That's all. We gave them money too, just like we gave the Iranians. We signed documents with them too, so forth and so. What the hell is it going to take to realize what we're up against here? This country should be united in its own defense. Nobody's dragging us into anything. It's not the Jews. It's not Israel again. No. Long-range, intercontinental, ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads are for you and me and your children and your grandchildren. That's what it is. And if they get them, they will use them in due course, if not sooner. They will change the entire Middle East. And you'll say, who cares? Yeah, who cares? Who cares about that? Who cares about Europe? Who cares about anything, right? Wrong. One day we'll turn around and we don't have any allies. And the enemy will be lined up. You know, they're in our hemisphere. They're in Central and South America. Oh, yes, they are. They're in the Arctic Circle, which is why the president talks about Greenland. They have a West Africa base to the communist Chinese now. They have a base in the Solomon Islands now. What do you think they're doing? You think they're going fishing? The good news is Donald Trump is not one of these people. He's not an isolationist. He's bombed Yemen. He's taken out Soleimani and Baghdadi. He does what he needs to do. But this is a force that continues to try and pressure him, pressure congressional Republicans, pressure people like me to keep our mouths shut. Never. Never. Never.
Hey, Sean.